So, hello everyone to today's interview, which we are going to have with Igor. And I'm very much looking forward to hear his story because we were chatting right before the recording, and he told me that his ride is now 13 years in. So I'm pretty sure he can share a lot. And I also encourage every one of you who's listening that you just reach out whenever you have questions, and that when you have questions to exactly this story, just write down in the comments, and Igor, I will tell him that somebody's reaching out to him, and he will for sure be happy to answer all your questions. But let's just start and ask the first question, which for me always is, just tell us who you are, Igor, where do you live, and how is your life right now, so that we have a bit of an impression.
My name is Igor Dukic. I was born in Sarajevo, which was called Yugoslavia at that time, now Bosnia and Herzegovina. I became a refugee and moved to the United States in 1996. I was 20 years old at the time. And then I studied art. I studied graphic design at College of Visual Arts and graduated in 2005. Since then, I've been living in Minneapolis. Then I moved to Chicago. That's where I had most of my spiritual experiences at the beginning. And then I moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Then I moved to New York City. Then I'm back in Minneapolis. Moved back 4 years ago. And so that's shortly.
The short story. So
Yeah.
did you go out because of the war? Of course, you had
Yes, because of the war.
to the United States with your family or alone?
Yes, I came here with my family, with my mom, dad, and my sister.
Okay,
Who
so
all
they
moved
live
back. They live in Bosnia. They all moved back. My sister got married and moved back because her husband lives there.
Yeah.
And then my parents retired and moved back because they want to be closer to their grandkids. But
Yeah.
yeah, and they come to visit me. They're here at the moment visiting me.
Nice. Okay, good. So so then let us know actually the beginning of your whole journey. And I know this is always difficult to explain because of course there is this peak experience of awakening, but the path to
Yeah,
there,
it goes downhill from there.
yeah. So but just let us know in your own words.
I actually had an awakening when I was 7 years old. I
Wow.
didn't know what it was, and it was incredibly, it was, I actually gonna start just by describing. I
Yes,
was
please.
7 and I actually grew up in Visoko, which is right outside of Sarajevo, where they have supposedly a pyramid, Bosnian pyramid. And it turns out it's a huge vortex, basically, and there's something there. And there's people from all over the globe that actually go to visit that place where I grew up.
Okay.
So in the winter, we would go climb that hill that looks just like a pyramid, and it's covered in vegetation now, but they discovered these stones underneath. So in the winter, we'll go up on top of that hill, we call it Visočica, and then we would slide down and race with kids. Like there'd be like 4 or 5 of us, and then we call this game where you actually can push each other because there's no banks around and like no cars went up there ever. maybe tractors sometimes, but even if somebody pushes, you just go into the deep snow and it's covered with I mean, there's so many pines, it's quite beautiful, just like sliding down through pines.
Can you tell me the name of the location again? Because I will put it
It's
down.
Visoko, and the name of the hill, I mean, now they call it Pyramid of the Sun, I believe, but we called it Visočica. That was the name of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And if people type in Bosnian pyramid, it's like really famous.
Perfect.
Yeah, like most of people know.
Okay.
So I'm going up there with friends and I look everywhere and everything is so illuminated and I'm just crying, but don't want my friends to see because that's embarrassing, right? I'm like completely bliss out and I'm like, oh my God, everything looks magical. And I was 7 years old and I was like, wow, I just remember I was saying to myself, it's incredible to be a kid and to experience this because it felt very kid-like and playful.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm sliding down, because we were pushing each other, one friend pushes me and I go into the pine trees.
Mm-hmm.
And in this moment, I'll never forget, there's this feeling of infinity and timelessness.
Mm-hmm.
And everything stopped kind of. And I looked around and everything was one. I was one with trees. I was one with sky. I was one with everything. And there was no time. It was timeless. And I was like, wow, but it felt so natural. As a kid, it was like, wow, but not like you don't analyze it. You're just like, oh, this is, everyone gets to experience this. I thought, it's just being a kid. It's magical,
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
was like, oh, screw this. I have to get back in the race. I don't have time.
And how long was this moment of eternity, which is very funny how I asked this
It
question.
continued, but again, it's hard to say because when you're a kid, I remember being blissful a lot as a kid and having these feelings. But again, you're just like, oh my God, as a kid, everything is so playful and beautiful. But I would see trees and they would be illuminated and, they would dance, energy would dance. And actually, I didn't even know how old I was. I went to the psychic and she told me, you merge with universe. She told me when you were 7. I was like, how did you know? I was like,
Wow.
can't believe you knew this. What happened to me? But then all of this, it wasn't like that it became dormant. It's just my ego developed. And then all of this was buried by beliefs and thoughts, And there was still this blissfulness underneath, but it was covered by unconsciousness and thoughts and so many layers of thinking. And it wasn't, and not only that, because of my intense sensitivity, I would feel intense pain and anxiety, especially during the war. Like I would feel this energy, heavy energy, just from living there.
Yeah, these were
And
like
intense fears.
3 years, huh? 3 years? Or how long have you been
In the war, I
in the war?
was in the war for about 4-5 years. And but anyway, like as a kid, like maybe 2 years after that, I didn't even think about these experiences. And then I had relatively normal, I mean, I had a very blissful and beautiful childhood until I was 14. That's when the war started. Or 15, and then I was around like 1920 when the war ended.
Yeah.
So that was completely different. But one also experience which I grew up in the very atheist family. And even though my grandma believed, but like no, like it was just like, I don't know, uneducated people kind of were more believers, and that was kind of my belief. It was like, oh, they believe in these things that are not real, just you know.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know.
my parents, my mom would tell me, is like, oh, you can believe in God, but you know it's stupid. I remember she would tell me that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really never interested in any of this. And not only that, but when the war started, I blamed religion a lot
Mhm.
because a lot of bad things were done in the name or by the people that were supposedly religious, although it had nothing to do with religion, just they're unconscious and conscious people, you know. It's not fault of God.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, this war was kind of because of strange belief systems. So
Yeah,
yeah,
strange belief system. I mean, and also there's a lot of unconsciousness in religion. And also people that are unconscious are easily manipulated and will find a way to turn it around for whatever their own gains or to control population. But
yeah.
anyway, one first thing that I came into the something spiritual that I couldn't deny, like I'm walking home. And most of the times I was even like mad at God. I was like, if you exist, why are you doing this? And or I would be like, I don't know, for just too much suffering kind of all around, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt very godless.
Yeah.
So I even strengthened my beliefs that God doesn't exist during the war. And not only that, but I kind of became angry at God unless my life is in danger, then I would pray to God. You know, it's funny how that works.
Yeah, but
And
but actually, just out of my own experience, and I think it's important to hear for the listeners. That was also my experience. I was actually arguing a lot with God, and I was kind of telling him he's an asshole. And I think it's very important for people because we are so conditioned that we always have to be nice. But out of my own experience, when you start to question and when you really, really want to know, and of course, kind of an aggression and being fed up is a very intense energy that goes out to the universe and you're hurt. And it's okay to argue with God. He loves it. For me, my experience, actually, this energy, whatever it is, but I call it God now for the people who are a bit too much into religion and conditioned, he loves it. And
I,
he's happy when you think with him about what the fuck is going on. So
yeah,
just to let the listeners know that for a second, but go on with your story.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's exactly how it all started for me, just by being angry and arguing and even calling him names, you know.
Yeah, but starting to ask the right questions. That's the
Yes.
goal.
So I'm going home and I'm intersection, not going home, I'm like going towards home and I'm on this intersection and home is left. And then my friend's house is like straight ahead. And during the war, I believe he had like pool or like these poker machines that were in the kind of like bars, but we would just turn them on and play
Mhm.
like because he had batteries, we had no power. So it was kind of like just do anything to kill the time because no one is doing anything and no power during the war. So I wanna go to his place to play either pool or this like poker machine, and then something comes and tells me go home. Like something much stronger than the voice in my head.
Mhm.
But at this moment, I was like, oh my God, I don't believe in this shit. Kind of. It's like, I'm not going to listen to you. So I take a step forward and then it's just intensely yells within me, go home. And I was like, wow, this is not a joke. It's like, how is this possible? Who is this person that is telling me this?
How old were you then?
So I was probably 16 or 17 and very confused. I turned and started going home. And I walked for about, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds. And then just as I go around this house, there's a shell that falls exactly where I would have been if I continue walking straight. And it would have killed me for sure. And then it killed few people there. But because I just had enough time to turn around the house, all the shrapnel was absorbed by the house. So I like dive, and it's kind of, I mean, these things happen when you live in the war. It wasn't a first time, but the first time I heard this voice, and I was like, what was this? And then he told me, it's not your time to die. Like, clearly, like I could just talk to this,
Wow.
And I was like, thank you. And it turns out to be my, whatever you call it, God. And then, I mean, guide, like spirit guide. And then there was few other times where she would come in and I could clearly hear her.
It's
yes,
a voice.
it's her. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was the first time. But again, it's like, I mean, I couldn't deny these experiences, but I was still skeptical just because I was so conditioned not to believe in any of this stuff. But this was like, wow, it's like, but still, you forget. And then it wasn't part of my life. I just fall into unconsciousness and got into school. And then like my relationship started crumbling, my work started crumbling once I graduated, like everything started crumbling around like when I was 30, age of 30. And then I started having severe panic attacks and anxieties where I could hardly function or go outside. And life became so unbearable, and I had so many health problems, like mostly severe back pain, pinched nerve, sciatica, where I wouldn't be able to walk for like months. So I remember and then
Igor,
I
can I shortly ask you what was before, the emotional turmoil or the physical pain?
You mean like when I started having severe panic attacks?
Yes. What was before
Before that, it was seemingly okay. I was in relationship and I started working, and
so
I mean, it
body.
seemed like it was okay, and I didn't have that severe anxieties. But I remember I would feel everyone's energy so intensely. I would have to numb it with beers.
But
The
physical pain, was that before? Did the physical pain start before the emotional pain, or?
I mean, I had right after the war, I had physical pain for almost more. Like right after the war, I got hepatitis. And then I got because like you have such adrenaline and you're like, I don't know, you don't have time to relax for 5 years. And then after the war ended, I just collapsed basically.
Yeah.
And then I started having hepatitis, and then I had the severe back pain was the worst.
Okay.
Really. And then I learned there was a lot of stuck emotions there. That's why I had a severe back pain. And then there was a period of relative fun I came to United States and I had a lot of friends and I would go out and party,
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, dancing, party, and be into the music and biking and relationships and playing that role. And then that all crumbled when it all started. And then I was just so depressed and with panic attacks and anxieties and would get sick a lot with I don't know, I had H. pylori virus, stomach virus, and then I would severe back pain and I would get sick a lot with flus all the time, just feel, when you have panic attacks, you just feel so cloudy and then just,
It's
it's
horrible.
very hard to go on. Like I never thought about like committing suicide, but I would think like, oh my God, I don't even know how I gonna go on like this. It's like too much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I I lost my job, I lost my relationship, all of that crumbled. And then I got sick and moved back to my mom and dad's home, which took care of me whenever I would have these things. And I would just go to their home and they would feed me and take care of me. And I was 34 years old, sleeping on the floor in their living room because of my severe back pain and unable to move. And when you have panic attacks, you're like rushing everywhere. You are kind of running away all the time. And all of a sudden, I couldn't move. I had to
Yeah.
face all of it. And my
Great.
mind had zero awareness. I was like, it was running 100. That's why I had panic attacks, because it was running 100 miles per hour everywhere. And it felt very insane, kind of, like bombarded by these negative thoughts, like I'm not good, look at me, I'm like complete loser, failure, my parents are taking care of me, I'm 34 years old, I have no family, I have no job, I have no nothing.
Horrible. It's
Horrible.
horrible.
And I was like, I have to change. And started like trying to read religious books. And I was like, oh my God, I don't resonate with this at all. So little by little, and then friend of mine gave me a book called New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm again same place in the living room with my parents for about, I don't know, 3 weeks now. And I started reading that book, and there was a sentence in that book that says, what a liberation to know that you are not the voice in your head.
Mm.
Who are you then? You are awareness behind that voice. And something exploded inside of my chest, as it really just, I like, are you kidding me? No one ever told me this. And no one ever hurt me as much as the voice in my head. And it's been hurting me and still is. And it's pretty much cause of all of my problems ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I continued reading that book, and then I started having all of those feelings that I had when I was 7 years old. Like book just became illuminated, and the letters would start dancing, and the book became energy that would be the same as my hands. And I would look through the window and look at the trees, and it's
Wow.
very, illumination, just like movement of each leaf. I would see all of it.
Mm.
And it just continued. And like I would just be intensely present, like he would say in the books, just be aware of. But I was so motivated because I suffered so much because of my ego, that shift when it happened, it was just like there's just huge awareness. And then my mind became funny. almost entertainment, like it's like a show,
Mm.
that's trying to scare me. It's like, look, be afraid now. I'm like having all these thoughts, and it's like, oh my God. But then it would almost be like, oh, you got me, and it would like go dormant. But it was like, it's like kind of game between hide and seek. It's like, I'll get you again, kind of, you'll be unconscious again.
And what happened those moments when you had that incredible feeling of connectedness again? What happened to your bodily pain?
It's just incredibly, everything started improving incredibly fast.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would feel so light, I wouldn't even have a body at time, because I would just feel energy. I would be energy. So there was really just illumination, and very fast I got better. And right after that, I just got a job right away and moved to Chicago. I got a job in Chicago, but I was still, I would fall. I was in samadhi state later. I called it Satori at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It's intense. I would just cry a lot from bliss, like almost every day, because everywhere I look, mostly sky and trees,
Mm-hmm.
but then like birds, and it would be me. Everywhere I look, it would be me, but perspective would change. I would look at the sky, but it would be me looking back at myself.
And how long did this state
This
continue?
state lasted a very long time, 2 years.
Wow.
Yes. And I thought, and it was getting stronger and stronger, and it went really far. I'll get to there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I lived in Chicago. It was so beautiful because it's such a big city, and it's so easy to become that nothingness there,
Mm-hmm.
just because there's so many people and no one looks at you, no one gives the shit about you. And I would just walk among like thousands of people, just crying and crying, just seeing this sea of consciousness that I would merge with everything. And it was just so beautiful. And I'd be like, wow, wow, just be wow. Like all the buildings are dancing. But it was so easy to work. It was all the play. I could sleep on the bench and like had zero fear, because I was in this state where it felt almost death-like state.
Mm-hmm.
It's formlessness. You don't have a body. So it's like, oh, what, are you gonna kill me and I'm gonna go into this state? Really? You're
Yeah.
gonna release me from the body? Really? It's like, is that what I'm gonna be afraid of? Like really complete fearlessness state. But again, it's impossible to form something egoic out of it, because there's no you.
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely no you there, and everyone you see is it.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you? It's not special at all, because you see all of these people are it, except they just cannot see it because there's so many layers of
Yeah.
beliefs and thinking, so that light cannot penetrate. If you remove all of those, which is going to happen sooner or later,
Mm-hmm.
they're just going to become pure consciousness, the sea of consciousness that's one with everything, and there's nothing that's not it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I also felt guilty. It's like, what did I deserve to feel this way? Because you do feel, it's like, okay, now I get like, this is that Buddha state and Jesus state that they talk about. And you wake up and you're in heaven, or even in Christianity, like at the beginning, they said God made a world and it was good. It's like perfect. Everything is perfect and everything has its own place. It's like this symphony where each note is exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah. You just feel it. Yeah. So just shortly, but how was that state? I mean, I had that state for 2 weeks. And actually, um, what was different for me than when I hear it from other people is that actually, even though I was in that state, the state still made me fearful. Like I had that feeling of, especially because the energy also was very active at that moment. So I had that feeling of I cannot control the energy. And I was actually so afraid of all these wonderful emotions that I was kind of expecting when somebody tells me something which is too emotional and too nice, my energy will just burst out uncontrollably. And when I relate to that state, it made me a bit fearful. And that's so strange for me because other people, they say that it was just all bliss and wonderful. Were you never afraid in that state?
It changed and it got very fearful, so I can relate.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
this was at the beginning, and first 2 years were extremely blissful. But then second year, because as I said, it was getting deeper and I was meditating. I lived alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to be alone most of the times, but I would go. I mean, I had friends, I partied. It was just a play, really. And all I did is talk about spirituality and my state. And somehow I would attract these people, would come talk to me at the train, and we would talk about God. And like homeless people were my companion. I talked to them almost daily and give
Mm-hmm.
them presents and love.
Mm-hmm.
And even like when I would get robbed, I was like fearless. I was like, I'd just be so nice to them, and it wasn't a bad experience at all.
Yeah.
Everything was a play, but then, I mean, second year it was getting deeper, deeper, and I was like, it looks like this is gonna go on until I completely become enlightened, because there were still, it would get this way. But then there were times, thoughts would come in, but it was always there in the background. But I haven't processed all of my emotions and all of my blockages or
Mm.
unconscious thoughts or any of that,
Yeah.
basically. It was just like right away, this huge shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I was like, why? Like everything is one. Why did you create this? What's the point of all of this? Please, it's like you showed me everything, but it's like I don't understand what's the point of all of this. And
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. It's like whenever, if you really want to know something and keep asking, it will be given to you. But I suppose it's more like if it's your time.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept asking this and be like, okay, I feel this bliss all the time. And it's like becoming so intense. And I kept asking why. And then one night, which was probably the deepest spiritual experience I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
One night I'll listen to Rumi a lot and read Rumi, and like I'd be covering tears because every single word in there would just penetrate and go like in this sea of consciousness. Really, it would just trigger this sea and this oneness.
Yeah.
And I would listen to Rumi and I just cry as I usually do, and like just look at my apartments and everything would be dancing and it would be so alive. And then I had started having these visions of history of universe going backwards, almost movie-like. But when you're in these states of merging with universal consciousness, you are seeing so many things at once. So it's very abstract for the brain, because brain is like
I
a
know. I
box,
know. Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
a box, it's a closed box,
Yeah.
and
It's
it's
more
good at
about
like beliefs.
emotions. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can feel and like all of these things because you feel so vast. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, body feels like a jail cell. You're like in this, and then you go outside and like experience this sea of consciousness. And then I had all of these. Later, I learned that those are called Akashic records. Everything that has ever happened in the history of universe, it's contained in the present moment, really. And it can be seen here. And I would have wars and I don't know, Middle Ages, all going backward. And so many images at once. It was, wow, just like, wow, what's going on? And it kept going backwards, more to like Stone Age and even before that. And then it went to the Big Bang and creation of planets and all that bang, and it just went to darkness, to singularity. And I was there alone with no forms, before all the forms, before all the planets were born. I was there in singularity, and what a beautiful place. It's all dark. There's nothing, but I could stay there forever. It's so beautiful. And but it's very playful. You want to create, you want to play. It's very childlike.
Yeah.
And I remember it's like, oh my God, this is very kid-like. It's so beautiful, but I want to make things. And it was like, see why I created all of this. And I was just like, started bawling and crying.
Wow, this is so
I was like, can't you see why all of this came? I was like, wow, I can't believe you gave me this. And I was like, I'm done. I have no more questions, please. I want to do whatever you want me to do. I kept saying in Sufism, there's I want to die to myself, or you mean I want my ego to die, not physical body? And it's so beautiful. I was like, I'm ready to completely go all the way. And I was thinking I'm ready to completely merge and become enlightened. No, that wasn't what was in the plan for me at all. And after that experience, like 2 days later, I started having anxieties and fears, which I thought in those states for 2 years. I was like, I'll never be afraid ever again and have anxieties after seeing all of this. And was I wrong? And it felt like I'm gonna die. And I was really afraid. And then all of these openings I had started closing, and I started going back to my old self with all the problems. I was like, is this some kind of a joke? I really didn't mean like I want to die. I kept saying, because I kept calling it, I meant it in that state because it's so easy, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so with you. I'm so with you. This is so strange how you come back and why, and it starts to close again. And
yes,
wow.
and then I remember it was Christmas, and we had a Christmas party at work, and it was like I felt awful. I started having anxieties. I was like, are these people judging me? It's like, I can't believe I'm thinking whether somebody is judging me again. And I came back home tired from just all of these thoughts and anxieties. And I come back home, and then just like this angry energy comes. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I remember, because I felt so bad, occasionally I would smoke a little bit of weed with tobacco, and that would even open me more to these experiences, like over the weekend, not like every day. And because I felt so badly, I was like, okay, I'm gonna smoke some just to feel better.
Yeah.
And I remember I only had one paper left, and usually I would have like 2 or 3 spliffs, just put like a little bit of weed and tobacco. And I was like, oh my God, I only have one paper left. So I have to like put more. And I smoked it. And then that I was like, wow, oh my God, am I like getting anxious from the weed or
Huh.
like what's going on? And then this energy, my heart started going like boom, boom, boom. And this energy came like really exploded within my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sweating and like I had like, I don't know, my body was so violently moving and like me from my heart going like crazy, like my neck would go like boom, boom, boom. And I knew I was having spiritual experiences and I was like, I'm gonna call 911, but I don't know what to tell them.
Yeah.
And this kept going entire night. So I was like, cannot be from weed this long, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much it never stopped. And then, oh my God, it felt like I was like shattered in so many pieces. It was hard to even go outside. I became too sensitive to everything. I had severe, like, I don't know, panic attacks time 10. Because there's so much movement within your body, you're like afraid, you don't know what's going on. And it's so
Yeah.
violent. And I couldn't sleep for the first 20 days at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't function anymore. And if I tried to sleep and relax, any energy would become so intense. I just thought if I relax into it, it's just going to kill me. It's just that intense. And after 20 days, I mean, it beats you up that much and it breaks you that you have to give up. You cannot go on because I haven't slept at all for 20 days, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember I was just crying and I was like, oh my God, I have to let it go. I'm gonna die, you know, I'll have to go into it. And I couldn't drink or not. It wouldn't do anything, really. It does nothing. I didn't take any pills because I knew it's gonna do nothing. It's just so intense. It's like you cannot numb it with anything.
Mm-hmm. So what was that moment? What were the most intense symptoms? So you were scared about your heart and
Mm.
your pulse, actually, or
Actually, my entire body was so violently shaken by
uh,
this energy. And then, as I said, I was like, I'm gonna go into it. I don't have a choice. I cried. And then I just closed my eyes and went into it. And of course, it became stronger and stronger as I thought it would. And then pitching in my ears was crazy, kind of like when the plane is taking off, you know, that pitching and that pressure, you know, the pressure you feel in the head. Well,
mm,
that kind of similar feeling to that pressure, except a lot more severe, which kept going more and more, which I knew it would. And then it became that severe that I was taken completely outside of my body.
mhm. Yeah.
So I was like up there floating. I was like, I don't care. At least I'm not in fear anymore. I don't know if I'm dead or whatever this is now, you know. And but then I was like, oh, okay, it's not gonna kill me. If it gets this severe, it's just gonna take me outside of my body. I can, okay, good. So after that, I came back into my body, and then also severe difficulties continue for years, this energy, and it would also bring, as it would hit my body, all of these waves of Kundalini would bring all of these emotions that were stored within my body, all of these fears and not good enough and depression. And
Mhm.
I was bombarded, it like felt. You also feel some grounding, you're like all over the place. So like 5 minutes you feel depression, another 5 you feel anger. It's just so
Yeah.
violent. And so I was actually like this close to go to mental institution to completely becoming to go in psychosis. I would go into, you know,
I
yeah.
know, I know. Oh, been there, done
So
that.
not quite, but like I don't know. I played there a lot. Wouldn't
Yeah.
call it a play, but I was there, so can relate to all of those people
Mhm.
that are going through it. But still, my awareness was so strong there. I don't know. It wouldn't let me completely get unconscious and not aware of what's going on.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it took many years. First 2 years, I could hardly function. The only reason I continue working is I thought if I stay at home, I'll just go insane with all of this.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I would force myself to go outside, but going outside was hell, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so that first 2 years were extremely difficult. So those 2 years of bliss, then 2 years of complete hell, really. Like everything, all of those emotions I felt before panic attacks just multiplied. Seemed like
But was it for you? Was it very personal, or did you have a feeling of it's it's actually more like a collective anger or
it
sadness that got
felt it
you?
felt both, but it was so chaotic. I had no idea where
Yeah,
it's coming
yeah,
from
yeah.
anymore. A lot of it was personal, but a lot of it is like it's in the air, this collective unconsciousness I felt and heaviness. I couldn't even go shopping for groceries because I would feel everyone energy there, like everyone's anger, and like I would feel like fainting
Mm-hmm.
all the time from such an intensity of darkness and heaviness.
Yeah,
So going to the grocery store or anywhere outside was extremely difficult. So I would start shopping at night.
yeah. And when did your bodily symptoms start with the krios? That was there.
I didn't have Kriyas right away. I had extreme waves of energy, but not shakiness right away.
Mm-hmm.
Then I met somebody at the Kundalini group who was experiencing all of these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started having what people call twin flame kind of thing. But then I don't know. I don't try to define any of those things. It
Yeah.
just was crazy.
Yeah.
And then she was having Kriyas and she came to, I moved from Chicago to Arizona because I couldn't like do big city anymore and all of those
Mhm.
people and skyscrapers.
Yeah.
So I thought I want to go to the desert and to that stillness. Maybe it's going to be more healing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was, but you bring all of your crap with you anywhere you go. So it wasn't a place, you know.
Oh, that one also.
I mean, I could have gone to Hawaii anywhere and it
Yeah,
would just
I
be
know.
there waiting for me, you know. Any place on earth, like if I went, there was no way of avoiding it, really.
Yeah, yeah.
So she came to Arizona to visit me, and it was like magical experience, really. And then all the dancing started again, dancing with energy, and it became like very playful.
Mm-hmm.
And also because she was experiencing Kundalini, it just it was easier to share it with
Yeah,
somebody,
yeah.
and then we like became madly in love, and then she was like maybe third or fourth day I started having Kriyas.
Mm.
I met her.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Arizona, I moved to New York. That's where she's from.
Mm-hmm.
And she lived in New York. So I moved with her to New York and lived with her for about 5 months. And then, of course, like most of these, whatever is so blissful, it's going to become very dark as well. Feels like that's the way it's
Yeah,
been going.
yeah. When it is that energy, kind of twin flame, then it's a rough ride you're in.
And then it became extremely rough where we couldn't possibly be together. We had to separate. We kept our relationship for like a couple years remotely,
Mm.
but then like breakup was like really awful.
Yeah.
And and then after that, things started to get much better,
Mm.
much better. I moved back to Minneapolis, and then there's a Kundalini Awakening support group here in person. Like in Chicago, there is nothing. City of 9 million people. I looked for anybody that could help me.
In Switzerland, you have no place at all. Yeah.
Yes. And so I would go to these like people, but they're like, oh, I don't know, I can just like clear your chakra or like, you know. So I couldn't find anybody. And somehow in Minneapolis, they had a support group. And then I went there and met people that had Kundalini, had Kriyas, and had energy, and energy would be amplified when we met. And then with them, they would invite me. It's like, oh, you want to do kirtan and tantra and zikrs and
Mm.
all of these events. So I started to going these events with people,
Yeah.
chanting events, and that completely changed it. Really, this collective stillness. And so I couldn't meditate for years because I was afraid because it would just get amplified. So finally, after so many years, I could start going back into the spiritual practices like I used to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I started doing that intensely, to this day, I'm still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything started to get better, and then playfulness came back and bliss came back.
Mm.
Not quite that oneness, but it's more grounding now.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that's the point which I feel is the way it has to go. And we in the Western world, because we are not used to it, it's very difficult to find our way in that. And for me, it's also a lot of people who experience Kundalini awakening, they go out too much and then they have to find back. And to kind of bring these two forces together and in
integrate.
the middle earth.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that's about it. I talk
Wow.
a lot. Thank you for listening.
So interesting. And I just my other question now is, when you talk about when you go out of body, so it's the moment where you kind of have that connected feeling again, and how do you go back? Do
I
you
don't do anything
it,
ever. Like people kept telling me, it's like, oh, you can control energy. It's like,
yeah.
I don't know how you do that. They're like, oh, you can manipulate energy. Really manipulate this energy? I mean, I tried everything, really. And then I gave up, as I said. And I don't do any of that. It's not me that decide when to go out of the body. It's not me when decides when to go back in the body.
Mm,
I'm just there observing, but that's the feeling I had really when I was in those like intense states where really it feels like I never done anything. It's always universal consciousness that does things through me.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's like a movie, but you forget you are an actor only. It's not real.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these were experiences that I did not have with the energy on her own. But I did have these experiences of kind of no understanding that I am this, and I'm the energy which is telling a story all the time, and don't stop telling that story. And it's me, and it's through all of us, this
Yes.
universal story, which
Yes.
which has a lot to do for me with what is real love, is tickling down through all of us and is being told through us. And now all our mother issues and father issues, they have to do with this energy dancing up very wonderfully. And as much when it comes more down and gets more dense, then the story gets very distorted, and all the issues come up. And so for me, that was very intense. That was when I did ayahuasca or magic mushrooms, where I had these intense insights of, wow, this is me telling that story over and over again. So so actually one of my last questions would be then, what do you think is, well, actually you said it before, but what is it all about? Because you said before you were at that place where you understood, well, of course I do it because it's beautiful. I'm a child and I want to play. And
it's just a play. It's a play of consciousness. It's a play of wisdom, really.
Yes, but so I see that as well. I saw it myself quite well. Actually, I never see it, I feel it. For me, it's a lot about feeling what is true. So I know that energy, which is just telling a story, but where does it go wrong for you? What do you think is the problem when suffering creeps in?
I think it has nothing to do with energy. It's not energy that causes suffering, really. It's our unconsciousness and our belief system that causes all the suffering it has. It's really, and it's been given to us and to our parents and their parents, and we've been unconscious for thousands of years as a species, as humanity, really. And but again, suffering is a beautiful teacher, spiritual teacher, and unfortunately for the most people, only spiritual teacher. And I don't see, for me, it brought about transformation of consciousness. So it was the most important thing, really, and probably the most valuable thing on my journey, because all the bliss wouldn't have been there without the suffering. So it's a play. How would you even know what's the point to incarnate here and be here if you are just in that state of bliss? Why? Because you're in that state without the body, you know? So what kind of play would that be? I mean, this is a master artist at play, you know?
Yeah, so I'm curious what you think about my feelings and insights through that I had, because for me, as I feel it very much through my body, when I lay down and this energy is kind of pushing, then when I work with that, then the insights come along with it. And for me, what I found out is that actually it's really true. Truth just is, and love just is. And actually, a lot of chronic pain, or the pain I feel in my body, is not because actually something is pushing and hurting me, but it's because I kind of hold together and I don't want to let it go. So, and I think the trick is to get out of it is not too much going somewhere and trying to heal it, but just to really recognize it. It's me. It's not the pain that came and is from outside. It's me holding on to something. So I just have to let it go. It's like a cage. You have to just let it go. You don't have to feel that way.
But also letting go happens when once is ready. I heard all of these stories like surrender to Kundalini. Yeah, when somebody puts the gun in your face and tells you, oh, surrender, you know, let's see how you're gonna do. it's not as easy, even though read all these books and it's like, oh, I just gonna surrender. It's like everything happens where it needs to happen, and there's no
Yes.
way of avoiding anything. And if you have to process and go through the darkness in order for you to transform, and unfortunately that's how transformation happens.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm not even trying to save anybody anymore, because I know I needed to experience all of this pain to be where I am right now.
This is so true.
So
So
there's no rushing anymore to get better, because I know when I do rush, I just create more tension. I just don't want to feel the way I do.
mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it just creates more tension and more suffering. So, I mean, easier said than done, right? When you're in that state, it's like natural. You don't want to feel the way you do just because it doesn't feel well. So you want to escape somehow. But fortunately, because I experience a lot of pain, it does make you surrender to it more and more and more. And because I don't think pain stops really,
Yeah.
part of being human. So there's always something. It's just whether you cling to it and make stories about it, how poor me, or you're just there and observing and watching the show. you know, I think that's
Yeah.
the only choice we have. Yeah.
Yes, it's so true. But this is also, I also find it very interesting that whatever you try to get across to somebody else, like it's like just you cannot rush it, just let it go, just go with the flow because there's no other way. As long as you haven't experienced it on your own, somebody can tell you that over and over again and it will not hit. And this is also because that's the essence of the teaching there. You have to experience it,
You
otherwise
have to
it's not true.
experience it, yes, and you have to go through all of these things. And
Mm,
wow, I mean, looking back, like what an amazing ride. I mean, it's difficult once you're in it, but
mm,
then looking back, it's like, oh my God, I wouldn't even change all of this pain, was really brought something
yes.
that was necessary for all of this bliss to enter. It makes the space, as they call it in
Mm,
Buddhism
mm,
or Sufism,
yeah.
really creates the depth and
Uh-huh.
space for something new. But then again, if I didn't experience the pain, I wouldn't be so motivated to be so aware of my thoughts and my patterns and be so present.
It's
That's the first time I started living, when I became intensely present. All of it was more like a dream state,
mm,
really.
mm,
You're constantly in the mind making up these stories, assumptions, judgments,
mhm,
mostly about yourself, but then you judge everyone else
mhm. Yeah.
as well. And it's like, wow, and that's how most of the people live. But that was also a necessary step in the evolution of our consciousness, and where we are is necessary.
Mhm,
But
mm,
I see whatever happens to me internally, it's going to happen collectively.
yeah.
Like everything is going to start crumbling and become really painful before it transforms,
Yeah.
and before we turn into more conscious humans, which we are, we're just evolving.
Mhm, mhm.
And
Yeah.
I think that's also the purpose of being here, just to evolve and become more conscious, basically,
Mhm.
of our essence.
Yeah. So what helped you the most? Also for your creos or what you actually, of course, what you just said is something that helps a lot, I think, when you're in that process in to just in the end really find out and experience on your own that you cannot rush it and it's okay wherever you are. In hindsight, it will make a lot of sense, but what helped you the most? I saw that you're painting. So I don't know if this is also a really.
I mean, there were a lot of different periods. So what's helping me today and what helped me a few years ago didn't help at all 10 years ago, because like at the beginning, pain was so intense that meditation was the worst thing I could have done, because I was so ungrounded and all over, and it would just move, it would just make this energy even more intense. So when people told me like meditate, I was like, are you kidding me? You don't know what I'm going through. I'm gonna end up in like mental institution if I do. It's like
Yeah,
everything is so open. I'm gonna go
exactly.
someplace, you know.
This is exactly when I know when people really experience such stuff, then you know, no, you cannot tell everybody
You
meditation is
cannot
good.
tell.
Maybe
So
it's really the worst thing you can do that very
the
moment.
worst thing you can tell them, although it seems like I mean, how could meditation be bad to anybody? It
Yeah, but
can. Trust me, it
and
can be very dangerous if you're in that state I was. It's the last thing. And I tried. It's like, oh my God, 5 minutes is like, I would have like such a waves of energy. I would suffer for an hour after that just to calm it, because it would make these like intense storms, even like the sea of consciousness would just be so severe, like these waves would even get bigger, which is the last thing I wanted, you know. But
yeah.
then later meditation was exactly what I needed, but it took years. So again, I mean, whatever you need is gonna be given to you, so it's not really doesn't require us
So
to
in the end, we can still then sit down to something which everybody tells you anyway you should learn in life, which is just listen to yourself. Whatever is good for you is good
just
for you,
listen to.
and
Yes.
don't be so harsh. You are where you should be. So
Actually, those things, be compassionate to yourself, be patient with yourself, be aware always of your thought patterns. I mean, that's meditation without really meditating and making energy amplified if you are going through those states. Also, physical activity never hurt me. Like, I love biking and going into the nature, biking, swimming, walking, always.
okay.
Never, even when the energy was the most amplified, like biking. I mean, sometimes I couldn't do much because of the too much sensory overload. But that's one thing that helped me before I could start going into my spiritual practices. Like for years, when I moved to Arizona, I would go for hikes. I would be in the mountains, go for walks, go for bike rides, also getting lost and doing things. Like I didn't want to do anything with spirituality for years because it was just so painful. I didn't read books, I didn't meditate, but I would do art and play with design. I work as a graphic designer, so that was always playful. So I would get lost in those things or go hiking. But then time came where I became again interested in spirituality and started meditating intensely and chanting. So
Yeah, nice. Can you send me the link to your artwork? Am I allowed to put a link?
absolutely,
Yeah,
thank
because I
you.
looked at them and it's so beautiful, and people might be interested. And how does that come to you? Is it often that you kind of the energy is showing you? You have like um yeah, that the creative.
Actually, I only painted during pandemic, and because I didn't work and I had all this time, and I actually really enjoyed pandemic. It was so much stillness, and I was already getting in such a better place. So I started painting because I could play again and really get lost and be present and have that kid-like nature. And I would just, and my mom paints, so we would paint together during pandemic, and she would help me with compositions, and she would paint some of my compositions. I would sketch them and she would paint them.
Yeah, nice.
And so, yeah, it was really, I love painting. I love art in general.
Okay,
So
so
I did that for 2 years. And then about a year ago, I started working again, full-time job as a graphic designer. But that's also playful. And again, going to the flow with the flow. So maybe there'll be time to paint again. But right now, I haven't been painting.
mhm. Okay.
But right now I'm doing a lot of I do zikr, I do tantra, I do kirtans, I go to meditation,
Yeah.
I do energy work, I do go to retreats for aesthetic dances, experiences, energy work,
Oh
all of it.
yeah, yeah. I
And I
I
have a wonderful community of friends here. It just feels very aligned right
yeah.
now because all of my friends are either Kundalini awakened or just into it. So we do things together and we laugh and cry and play. It's just so playful and talk kind of just like we did today.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So
So
especially when I do spiritual practices with them or we do them for a long time, oh my God, there's so much playfulness that
yeah.
come out of that state of stillness
Mm,
that we feel after like singing for 2 hours,
mm,
for example.
mhm. Very empowering. Beautiful. Yeah, so let's stop here. And it was so nice. Maybe we can catch up another time because Mickey, also other people who I talked to, we thought about actually it would be also interesting to have a call together, some people together, and just talk about certain topics and just get it out there. And whoever is interested can watch it then because it's so important. People need to know that they are not alone, they're not crazy, and still that you have, as you said, you have to really also be careful in certain states that you don't lose, but that you just listen to yourself and yeah, be very self-aware and don't let anybody else tell you what is good now. So yeah, very important. So thank you very much. And here you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening and thank you for doing this.
Yes.
What a pleasure, really, to share and to listen as well.
Let's keep in touch, okay? Thank you.
Definitely, yes. Have a wonderful day. Thank
Yeah, you
you.
too.
Bye bye.
Bye.